We're talking glue guys that can turn into starters down the road. We'll talk about that and more here today on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining me here on the Locked On Jaguars podcast. We're at your team every day, and we thank you for making us your listen. I am Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast. We really enjoy and appreciate you joining us. Make sure you tap in on the Locked On Jaguars YouTube page where you can subscribe for free. And then wherever you get your audio podcast, make sure wherever that is, you check in every day to make sure you don't miss an episode. What's up to my everydayers? A shout out to you guys for joining us here on Locked On Jaguars every day, making us who we are. And to the newcomers, a little bit about me. I've covered the team for, a long time now. I sometimes get confused whether it's 13 or 14 years in a variety of ways. Mostly, though, I'm, here, my expertise is just being a fellow Duvalian, a local, someone who has saw this team or seen this team from its inception. And I think I like to think that I have my pulse on the finger of the franchise a little bit, even though a lot of people don't disagree with that. Some people think I get people all the time yelling and screaming at me and stuff about things that I say, but that's all right because it's good to be polarized and you can't satisfy everybody as long as you're extremely honest. So I think you guys would enjoy the podcast. So hang in there. What we're going to talk about today, though, is real football stuff. Like, not some fancy story on somebody who did something really good, although we like those. I'm not going to have my Roy Firestone moments that my buddy Rick Ballou used to call me Roy Firestone on the radio, because I always seemed to, when I did live interviews, be able to make people cry and all that stuff. But not doing that today. We're just talking ball. We're talking more team structure now that, everyone is everyone except a few people joined yesterday for the offseason program. I was not in attendance yesterday, so I'm not going to sit here, and I had some personal stuff going on. I'm not going to sit here and act like I was. I did field some phone calls to find out what was going on, and it's hard to. I actually talked to a player this weekend that told me it's going to be kind of laid back, man. Actually, it's not going to be too much stuff going on, and especially in front of the media, helmets, shorts, which is what it turned out to be. Good to see Calvin Ridley, though. The videos that I saw of him and what I heard about Calvin Ridley is that it takes one look and you realize why he's so talented. And I think a lot of people thought he was smaller than what he is. But if you remember the videos and stuff from Alabama, and he's probably small standing next to Julio Jones in that huddle in Atlanta, but Calvin Ridley has some guns, and Calvin Ridley is over 6 feet tall, maybe 6'1". I don't know what he's listed, maybe at about 190 pounds, but it was nice of Devontae Adams in on a podcast when he listed his top 10 players. He named Calvin Ridley as one. So shout out to whoever that was in my mentions the other day. I forgot your name. That said that Calvin was going to be a bust. Devontae Adams might know a little bit more about wide receivers than both you and me if you criticize me, but it's just good to hear. But to talk about Calvin, it's good to be able to bring him up, because what we're going to talk about on today's show are the next wave of guys. And I mean, we haven't won anything yet, right? So football teams, while they're trying to win, they also have the job to also pay attention to what's ahead, right? There are people in the organization that have to do that. Whether you've achieved your goals or not, you have to proceed in a sort of way that says that you're going to, right? At least from the stage that they are in now. So let's set this up. The Jaguars have been looking for stars for a long time. They're in this constant search of stars, and particularly at the quarterback position, which is the most important position in football, right? So they finally got that. So what comes with that? Do you just go, we're happy to have Trevor, now just get out of the way? A lot of people say that tongue in cheek. Sometimes they say it so much, I think they actually think that it's true, but it's not what you have to do. You have to really, really set up this. Once you have that, you have to act as if the easy part is yet to come. Like the hardest part is getting a guy like that, right? And then the next hardest part is surrounding him at various positions, especially those that have so much positional value. Having people around him, that's the same thing. I skip getting a coach because that is also necessary. You can actually do that before you get the quarterback, or even after, or at the same time. It's extremely important that at some point you start acting like a championship organization even before you win the title. I don't think you can win a championship unless you start doing championship type things prior to you actually winning it. You can't just wait till you get there and then act like you're going to get ready instead of just being able to stay ready. So what that means is the support system, the glue. And if you could draw a parallel to basketball, we've seen it now in basketball where it appears that two teams that have been together a long time and that really drafted and hit on their draft picks and now hit on their free agency and understand their identity. It looks like it's going to be Miami and Denver. Denver swept the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals, and Miami's a game away from sweeping Boston. So if we use that as an example, you would see that individually, let me move my tongue out of the way. Individually, and from a talent perspective, there are a lot of teams in the NBA that have one or two guys that might be better than a lot of guys, even though Joker's playing real well, like Kevin Durant, Booker, AD, LeBron, Tatum, all of these guys are going home, right? So you notice there, even though if those teams have good parts, you notice the difference is that everyone on the teams that are winning seems to know and understand their role. And that's very, very important. And that didn't happen overnight. That stuff has been in the making for 2 or 3 years. So now bring it to football. While the Jaguars are trying to win and they're trying to just get over the hump and they're trying to press, and we're trying to get used to being in this space, right? There's work that is going on behind the scenes that's going to ensure and make sure the Jaguars stay in that space. And whether they're successful or not, you have to act like you're going to win that trophy here within the next 1 or 2 years. So there's a gang of people that aren't saying if, what they're saying is when we become champions, how do we stay that way? Because once you become champions, the price of everything goes up. Yesterday's price is not today's price. Average players want to be paid like great players because of the team, what the team was able to do. So one of those things is being able to have a bunch of glue guys. And this may have been a real good reason to have a bunch of picks this year, even though they tried to actually get off of some of them and it didn't work. You can actually take and have more bites of the apple to try to find these glue guys, right? So I'm going to go through today some guys that are glue guys. And what I mean by glue guys, it doesn't mean that their whole job is just to develop and wait for next year. No, it's their job to stay ready, play special teams, do depth things, but when it's their time to step up to the forefront, be able to do it. So I'm going to give you a prime example of those players that what those players were with the Jaguars. I'll give you those here in segment 2. But I'm going to give you a real good example of one that's a Pro Football Hall of Famer when he's not out here being an idiot, and that's Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown came in the 6th round, had a bunch of guys in front of him in Pittsburgh, played special teams, worked his butt off in practice, really raised the level of the floor of the room, and eventually raised the roof off of the position room, but did everything. He got to the point where the Pittsburgh Steelers couldn't keep him off the field. It's not like they were just saying, well, if we let him go, I think we got a guy that can fill in. No, it wasn't that. It wasn't like some fallback plan. It was like, we got to find a way to get him, and this dude is in the way. And it's a good thing he's a free agent because he was taking his lunch money anyway. That's what I mean. Can we develop and find those people? We talked about basketball real quick. Jokic, the center. He was a 2nd-round pick. We saw the NBA draft recently, and people were complaining, I don't know who half these guys are. They were saying that at pick number 8 in the 1st round. Don't discount guys that are picked late in any sport because you never ever know what's going to happen when they get out in front of the opportunity and they start to develop and they start to change their body. So we're going to talk about that here in just a second. Which Jaguars can be those people? Which Jaguar players can be the kind of players that can play their role, really, really lift the floor of their various position group rooms, and then eventually develop into a starter? They think they have one in Walker Little that's ready to do that now. I'm a little bit unsure because they drafted someone else, but we'll see here in just a second as I continue to talk about this a little bit more on Locked On Jaguars. Some guys that I think will make the difference as glue guys to be just like some former Jaguars. We'll discuss that here in a second on Locked On Jaguars after I let you know about today's sponsor, and that is FanDuel. Man, you got it. FanDuel is off the chain. This is a good time for you to jump all over. You need to make a fast break to FanDuel during these NBA playoffs because it's getting close to championship time. Because right now, new customers can get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's right, $1,000. The two best players in the playoffs has been Joker and Jimmy Butler. Can they meet in the finals, and who's going to stand tall? There's no better place to bet all of the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's FanDuel.com/locked-on. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, running it down here on Locked On Jaguars, talking about glue guys that can eventually turn into starters and eventually maybe even leaders as they replace the inevitable guys that will start to leave here in the next year or two when the Jaguars get good. Now, you can sit here and say that we're overshooting the runway or that we're going a little bit too fast or we got to win first. No, they do. They do. They absolutely do. And when they do, that's what we'll be talking about, right? But there's another phase and there's some other things going on behind the scenes. We're going in the kitchen a little bit. We're watching them make the dough. And we're watching them let it rise, with the yeast in it. And we're watching the stuff that doesn't seem to be that pretty because that's what they're doing now. They're not playing games right now. They're not playing meaningful games. They're not really still in too much of adding players and all of these things. So what's happening right now is guys are being developed. They're looking and they're seeing. If you don't think player development is important, look at the size and the body, how the bodies of Andre Cisco and Rayshon Jenkins, even Trevor Lawrence to a little bit. And I know there were still photos that we're watching on social media, but these dudes look absolutely yoked. You hear me? These guys look absolutely yoked. They look like they've been in tip-top shape. They've been getting in shape. They've taken this very, very seriously. Shout out to them if they're working out on their own or with the personal trainer in the building. But this is the thing that you want to see. You want those, what I called them the other day, those football playing Jessies, guys that want to get better. And I think as a characteristic, that's who they're drafting. They're drafting people like that are really self-motivated and want to win as a team. So when you think about it, there have been guys in the past and players in the past with the Jaguars that when I name these people, you're going to be like, what are you talking about? Those dudes are some of the best players in Jaguars history. Go back and look at when they were picked and what their roles were. Maurice Jones-Drew is the perfect example. Although he was a second-round pick, they had Fred Taylor still in his prime. They did. Maurice Jones-Drew came in, ingratiated himself with Fred, was a real good 1-2 punch with him, was a playmaker, did everything that he was supposed to do. And I think Tank Bigsby can do the same thing. I really, really do. And there are a lot of people that love Tank. I'm not one of those folks that like the new thing so much. I'm going to say, well, he's going to be the starter at the end of the year. No, I'm not giving up on Travis Etienne. And I don't think adding Tank Bigsby was some sort of indictment on Travis Etienne. I think what it was it was a recognition by Doug Peterson because of his history and a recognition that we need more people. Why should we just assume that our backup needs to be a guy who's a backup? Why can't he be a starter? Why can't we get a Tony Pollard type impact as a backup, even if it's a different type of impact? Why can't we do that? Why does our backup have to look like a backup? and just be a sort of a filler guy. And I totally agree. I think he's that type of player. Rasheem Mathis came in, drafted as a safety, eventually moved to corner. Was a role player when he got here. Backed up some guys, got into the mix really, really fast, but eventually surpassed all of those dudes and became someone who deserves Ring of Honor, thoughts. Rasheem Mathis is one of the 10, 12 best players to ever play um, for this team. And he's really probably at the top of the food chain at that position. So this is what I'm talking about. You have to get guys like this. I think Brad Meester was sort of like that, even though he got off the ground really fast and started running really fast. But I don't think anybody thought when they picked Brad Meester he'd be a 14-year Jaguar. I think Brad Meester played more games as a Jaguar than anybody. So these are the type of things that you're looking for. Guys that can come in, give a contribution, be a big part of the success, make impactful plays from time to time, but for the most part, really, really, really pressing the mark, putting their head in it, getting their head in there, being Johnny on the spot. Those are the type of things that actually lift the team up. So some names that came to mind to me, the first one was Ventrell Miller. And if you're watching on YouTube, you saw him on my thumbnail. Ventrell Miller is, to me, the prototype player that I'm talking about. Physical tools, decent, not great, which is why he was there and available in the 4th round. But intangibles, when I talked to Brandon Olson, who covers Locked On Gators, and he said Brandon thinks he's like the 2nd or 3rd best linebacker to ever play at the University of Florida. And this is coming when the University of Florida isn't really they're not really on an uptick, and they're not hot on college football. So for somebody that covers that team and that loves that team to say that, it really tells me that there's something about him that endears him to coaches, and there's something about him that veteran players will absolutely love. I think Ventrell Miller from day one is going to be a guy that comes in, does every single thing the way it's supposed to be done. He's going to be a glue guy, but he'll also be a person that if you have to turn to him, he's always going to be prepared because of the type of individual that he is and because of his football character and the way that he goes. It's the perfect dude. And this is no knock on Shaquille Quarterman or anybody else or Chad Muma or anybody else like that. But this is one of those dudes. He's almost like I see him in the same, and don't trip out on me, but I see him similar to Nakobe Dean personality-wise. And Nakobe Dean did exactly last year what I'm saying that this guy needs to do. But Dean did it on a team that went to the Super Bowl, right? And that is come to a team, get yourself ready to play, do whatever's required, gain the trust of your teammates, and when it's your time, whether it's next year or the year after, be ready to go. And he's going to really, really, really challenge both Devin Lloyd and Chad Muma. Now, Lloyd and Muma, it's Lloyd in particular, I don't know what they're going to do with him. I don't know if they're going to move him around, but I'm hearing some rumblings that while they're going to, start him out where he was last year, that they're going to play with him and move him around because of his physical ability. And if they do that, this really provides an opportunity for Ventrell Miller to come in and be like, look, I'm that rock at this position. Even if he doesn't start, it does not matter. Good players don't start on good teams that win championships. So I'm going to go through some names, talk about some other players that I believe have this chance. And then I'm going to talk about one in particular that we hope is already there because it will behoove us to be right about it. What am I talking about? I'll tell you what it is in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, running it down here on Locked On Jaguars. I'm Tony Wiggins. Shout out again to my everydayers joining us here on Locked On Jaguars. We're at your team every day, and we thank you for making us your first listen. New people, if you show up again tomorrow, you're not new people anymore. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button and hit that bell so you can get notifications as well. Drop your comments down in the comment section. I will do everything in my power to make sure that I answer. Unless you start trolling me, you might get a real good answer then. Parker Washington, Ventrell Miller, Jordan Smith, Antonio Johnson. Names, guys that I believe have the best opportunity because I actually see a little hole in the depth chart where they absolutely fit in perfectly. And I think they're all going to make this team, and I think they're all going to make this team with their contributions, as well as a little bit of an eye towards the future. I'm going to tell you why it's important. The Jaguars have said that they're going to be a draft and developmental team while they're trying to press the line on winning championships and being relevant every year in a conference where everybody's loaded with quarterbacks, right? So if that's what they're going to do, wouldn't it be nice if some of these dudes that they have depth-wise make it real hard to keep them on the field, off the field, at positions where guys are going to play well and ultimately become free agents and then leave. And the Jaguars already have homegrown, not really, really expensive options to plug in, guys that they wanted to play anyway, right? It's like if somebody wants to take you to an expensive steak restaurant and they don't have any reservations, so y'all go across the street and all they have is a burger joint, and it's like the best burger you ever had, and you get full, and you say, I just saved $100 and I'm full and I still got the job done. Well, that's what this is like. We had a situation here just this past off season with a very well-liked player in Jawan Taylor. Everybody liked Jawan Taylor. Now, there were people that did not know whether or not he was worth the money that he was paid. I'm not one of those people. I think he was. But what made it easier for people to accept, and the reason why no one is saying good riddance to him the way that they did other free agents or guys that asked to get traded, is because, well, one reason is he didn't go to the Titans. But the other thing is because they had someone that they think can do exactly what I said needs to be done. And they believe that someone is Walker Little. And I know I've been a little bit condescending when I've been saying that Walker Little must be Larry Allen, John Hanna, and Anthony Munoz all rolled into one the way people talk about him. And I meant it because people do talk about Walker Little as if they are sure that he can play both tackle spots and guard better than anybody else on the team without really having anything to back that up other than their emotions. That's why I get into that. But he's exactly what I'm talking about. He's exactly what you need. He's exactly the guy. Now, he's different from Devon Hamilton because Devon Hamilton was pressed to start early, and he's done that. But Walker Little was a guy that developed. He got in and got back into football shape after being off the field for a couple of years. You know, they've been lifting. They've been working him. He's with a really, really good offensive coach now, or position coach, and Coach Rauscher. And Doug Peterson and those guys, they get and understand what it's supposed to look like, right? So this is the year where Walker Little should step right in and start somewhere. They're going to start Anton Harrison at right tackle. With the impending suspension of Cam Robinson, and he may not be suspended. We don't know if they win their appeal. With Ben Barch being out at left guard, at the very least, you may see a starting left side of Cam Robinson, then Walker Little, and of course Luke Fortin at center. If that's what you get, along with Sheriff and Brandon Sheriff and Anton Harrison on the other side, then that's probably what you'll see. If Cam Robinson somehow doesn't win his battle against his suspension, then you'll probably end up seeing Walker Little at left tackle. And then when Cam comes back, Walker Little going inside the left guard. But most people think that the future is for Walker Little to eventually play left tackle when Cam Robinson departs. Perfect. I don't care who he replaces, whether he replaces Cam or whether he replaces Jawan Taylor from last year. That's exactly what you need to have if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, right? You need those players. That's why you need them, because as you get better, guys are going to leave and guys are going to want more money. Jawan Taylor had the best season of his career last year, got paid. You have to do that at these other positions. Antonio Johnson has to get himself ready, has to show himself. And while he's doing that, make a contribution on special teams and also be able to also do what Dewey did last year and step in at a moment's notice and show that you're ready to go. You know why that's important? Because if they win, Rayshawn Jenkins might want more money. I think they extended him out an extra year to give them some flexibility. where he's supposed to be. His deal was supposed to be up this year, but maybe it goes on a little bit longer. But see, that's what you need in order to win championships. It is extremely important. So shout out to all of the guys that are in development right now that may not play a whole bunch, but are doing those things. And to me, I hope they're pretending that they're starters. I hope when they're going to practice every single day, what they're doing is saying, we're trying to knock these guys off because we want to play. Because that earns the trust of the team, it earns the trust of the coaches, and then it shows and it gives everyone an idea. The how they work behind the scenes and combined with how they play will allow coaches and GMs to make decisions on other guys when you have to be very, very fiscally responsible and figure out whether or not you're going to re-sign people or let them go. So watch the battles, not only the battles for the bottom of the roster, but watch the battles for those guys that are going to come in here and be equipped to try to push the guys in front of them. The good teams around the league, they have a bunch of guys like that. But when they lose, folks, they just slide the next group of people in and they're ready to go. I know you guys are going to be ready to go here every single day on Locked On Jaguars because it's your team every day. We're always thanking you for making us your first listen. More organic discussions about roster building all week as we continue to talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars and how they're going to be impacted by not only the influx of Calvin Ridley, who we discussed last week, but some of the glue guys and some of those guys that are going to be pressing for playing time to make this team better. Until next time, you guys take care of each other, and we'll see you on another edition of Locked On Jaguars.